same thing that you would have said a couple years ago, and that is the fact is what Darwin says, we don't need that kind of evidence when I've got the spirit guide talking to me and giving me these fantastic experiences. I've heard many people say, Kubler-Ross was on our program, Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the world-famous psychiatrist, said the most beautiful, wonderful experience of her life was when she saw the great white light, and it was a physical healing, etc. And this agnostic, world-famous psychiatrist changed her mind because of the experience. And I would say that you've got people all across the world in very high positions that are changing their worldview solely because of the experience. Now, what's wrong with that?
What's wrong with that is we're back into the marketplace of different experiences, and there's no one that sees any one master as being the one.
What do you think?
It's not in the book.
But you would say in the final analysis, Eck is the only way.
No. There's many paths to God. It is the only direct way.
Is that logical? If I say, listen, take any road you want, all of them will lead to my house tonight?
All roads lead to Rome and Italy.
They don't lead to my house, though.
No. But you see, there are many paths to God. And I believe, and as my not only understanding and knowledge, that the person that is on a particular path should not be swayed to be pulled off, whether he looks to a rock or to Jesus.
Yeah.
The experience is only limited to the lower worlds and the worlds of duality that Cal or the devil or Satan.
Yeah. See, what I'm getting to is people across the country, I feel, are having these experiences. You've got your experiences, McLean's got hers, and Kubler-Ross has got hers. And basically the same philosophy comes into play. You get there a different way. Jose Silva's got a different technique. Takes a couple days shorter to get into the altered state of consciousness. Now the problem is with these experiences, if I was to say to all of you that I'm having an experience of going home at night and I see a pink elephant in the backyard, and I bring all of you over and I say, well, there it is. And you look, and you don't see it. And I say, well, it's right there. And you go back to the window and you look again. And the fact is, well, you say it's not there, John. And I simply say, well, you guys can't see it. I'm the only one that can see it. You see? Well, they have two choices. One, they can cart me off to the funny farm. Okay? Or two, is they can simply say, you're living in a different realm, and we're using a different basis for evaluating data here. And the fact is that anybody could say anything about anybody, and the fact is there's nothing in what we call the real world that's going to determine anything one way or the other. It seems to be that if there is an elephant back there, I shouldn't be the only one that ought to be able to see it. And the evidence ought to lead us all to the same conclusion.
Not necessarily. There's visitations by entities, if I may get into flying saucers, that are entities that like to poke fun at people. Whether it's a pink elephant or a flying saucer, it doesn't matter.
We have tremendous experiences in this particular ballpark, and I think that there has to be a criterion for deciding which one is real. And do you want to toss a coin, or do you want to look at something that can substantiate your experience?
But what's real for John is not necessarily going to be real for you.
Well, you see, the problem there, Darwin, is that all of life is based on the fact that there's agreement among perception, whether it's in a law court or or you're shooting a gun with a rifle.
That's different than his pink elephant, though.
Well, you see, maybe you're seeing the pink elephant. The point is that there has to be a standard plurality, otherwise they cart you off to the funny farm after a while.
Yeah, I guess where I was coming from, Darwin, on that was to say that evidence should lead us to the conclusion that there's a pink elephant there or not. And if you can't verify it by looking at it, smelling at it, or something else, weighing it, then the fact is we ought to decide it's either there or it's not there. For one person to say it's there but nobody else can see it, then there should be a way of checking that. In terms of the New Testament, when it says that God is in flesh, you can point to a person. It's not a descriptive definition, it's a denotative definition. You can say, there he is. Look at him, see him. Real history, real people, real death on the cross, real resurrection. That's the world we're talking in. Everybody can check out the evidence before you jump. But to the person that would say, I cannot put up with a system that is logically contradictory, I can't just go with my heart because I've been fooled before. I also have a brain, and assuming there's a God that's there, he gave me that too, to think with. And if my brain says, don't go with your heart, what are you going to say to the person that says, look, the basic teachings are founded on plagiarism. Some of the things that are happening inside the movement don't look like God's love, etc. So what can you say to me to help me out at that point with my head?
For your head and heart. It's not in the books.
Well, you start with the head now.
It is not what is written in the books is only to feed the mind or one's ability to recall certain things.
But can you see the fact of a person saying, listen, I have seen other people, and if with my head I realize they've done things wrong, then why should I accept that?
Yes, but you don't want to judge your life by somebody else's.
We're judging on evidence here because I have to commit my life. If a guy says, get into this airplane, and a mechanic says there's a 50% chance it's going down, I should listen to my head.
I wouldn't get in it.
Okay, but then why would you get in something that's been plagiarized and has problems on the intellectual plane the other way?
You're hung up on words, and I'm not. It's not written in the book.
I guess it was evidence, the same kind of evidence as we had with an airplane.
You cannot bring God into a court of law.
Why not?
And I'm not God.
See, that's the wonderful thing is, in analytical philosophy, Anthony Flew and John Wisdom had a parable against all this God talk that goes on, especially in the liberal thinking.
Right.
Okay? And the parable was this, namely that there's a garden, and these two fellows went into the jungle, and the one fellow said, when they came to this little patch of green, hey, there's a gardener that's tending this place, because look at this. The other guy said, no way. And he said, well, I believe there is. There's the supernatural gardener that takes care of this place. And he says, well, listen, we better find out if that's true or not. How are we going to do it? And so he said, well, listen, what happened to your gardener must be imaginary.
Right.
Okay? And he said, well, I'll tell you what, we'll put up some bells and we'll put up some barbed wire and somehow we'll trap them. And maybe the first one was he was too tall or too small, and so they lowered it and adjusted it. And then they thought, well, maybe it's the invisible man, so they had to put up flour all around so they could get his footprints. And after that, when he said, well, listen, you can't, and no evidence was shown the next night after they sacked out and had all these gadgets there, they came to the conclusion, well, the one philosopher said, well, listen, if you can't see him, and he can't be felt or smelt or anything else or weighed, then the fact is you should come to the conclusion there is no gardener. And the other fellow said, well, listen, it's just beyond those senses. And the philosopher came back and said, well, listen, how does that supernatural gardener differ from no gardener at all? And that's the question. The biblical answer is that into the garden came the Creator into this world, and we could see him and we could touch him, and he did eat food and he did talk and he was here and he did die a real death, etc. So the proof is there. It's a basis upon which to invest your life before
okay, John,
you try out something.
I'd like to correct my statement.
Yeah.
In this respect, that I look to you as part of God. I've been all over this world, including India, and I didn't have a culture shock. I was prepared because of my ability to see things from another viewpoint via soul, not some entity or astral or mental body.
Yeah. One of the things I noticed in talking to people that are having the mystical experience is the de-emphasis on intellectual content. For example, in one of the other groups, they have a little slogan that goes, you need to get to the treasure if you want to get to soul. And to have this God consciousness, to really get into soul, what you do is there's a snake that's guarding the treasure. And you have to kill the snake before you can get to the treasure. The problem is you find out the snake is the mind. And that's what I find happening, is that we are knocking off the content via the mind and going and opening up to the experience. And if the Bible says that there's a real supernatural devil that's a liar, a murderer from the beginning, and he is out to damn our soul, he hates us, he doesn't love us, the fact is, if I have to put that into, if that's a possibility, and everybody that I have seemed to have on the program has said, yes, there is a supernatural power that's evil, okay? If that's a possibility, then why is it so hard to take one more step and say, maybe that supernatural evil power